all those elements back then is what made music sound so rich and full, because it wasn't just a hi-hat, a snare, and a kick. That's fine, depending on what you're trying to do, but it's those elements. It made it hip, because it's those elements that kids back then could relate to and hear and go, oh, that type of thing.
That's why we called it fat. You know what I mean?
Right.
Fat beats,
it was fat.
It had a lot of meat on it.
It was fat.
All right, today we're talking about a song that introduced the world to a truly powerhouse group. Their slow jams alone have soundtracked weddings, school dances, and let's be honest, a whole lot of intimate moments. I definitely had a few of their songs on my Make-Out mixtape. Tragically underused, but that's another story. But their first single, not a slow jam at all. It was a straight-up party anthem that can get the floor rocking to this very day.
That's right, Diallo, and we're diving into all of it, which is why today kicks off a special two-parter. We're taking it back to the beginning, to their rise to the top, with one of the founding members of this iconic group, singer and songwriter Shawn Stockman.
That's right. We're talking one song, and that song is Motownphilly by Boyz II Men. I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ Diallo Riddle.
And I'm producer, DJ, songwriter, and musicologist LUXXURY, a.k.a. the guy who whispers interpolation.
And this is One Song,
the show where we break down the stems and stories behind iconic songs across genres, telling you why they deserve one more listen.
You will hear these songs like you've never heard them before, and you can watch One Song on YouTube and Spotify, so many places. While you're there, please like and subscribe. So our guest today is renowned singer, songwriter, and member of the iconic group Boyz II Men. You know his unmistakable tenor from classics like End of the Road. I'll Make Love to You. On Bended Knee. And One Sweet Day. Together, one sweet day. Together with his bandmates, they have sold over 64 million records worldwide and counting. Let's give a warm welcome. That's insane. A warm welcome to Shawn Stockman, everybody. Shawn Stockman.
Shawn, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you,
really appreciate it.
I really appreciate it.
I don't know if this show will ever be able to say that our guest today is responsible for 65 million records. So that is an insane amount. So Shawn, let's take it back to the beginning of Boyz II Men. You, Nate, Wanye, and Mike met at a performing arts high school in Philadelphia. And to me, it really feels like Boyz II Men helped kick off a whole new era of R&B. And I'm not even trying to be grandiose. To me, that's really what it is. You guys, to me, are like the bridge between like a Keith Sweat and Guy era.
Sure.
And everything that came up later in the 90s when we were talking like 112, who I went to high school with Marvin Skandrick, a.k.a. Slim. I think you were Slim in your group.
Absolutely.
Every group has to have a Slim.
Everybody has
a Slim for all R&B groups. You guys paved the way for NSYNC, Jagged Edge, so many different types of groups. But like when y'all did it, there was no real paradigm. I was listening to the song Under Pressure and some of the harmonies you have at the beginning of that song. And I was like, what does this remind me? Does this remind me of Take Six? Or like, there are a couple of groups that were kind of doing the neo-doo-wop thing, but y'all just did it bigger and better. You were carving out your own lane. Did you see it that way at the time?
Yeah. Take Six was a definite influence for us. It's what we listened to in high school alongside New Edition and Guy and Babyface and all of those guys. Like, that was what kids listened to back then, especially kids like us. We went to a performing arts high school, as you mentioned. So harmony and vocals were, paramount.
I want to ask you about something specific for you, because I was watching your podcast, and you mentioned that you hung out with degenerates and goths.
Yeah.
I love that. And I'm curious to know what to you made you guys goths. Were you guys listening to Depeche Mode, or like what were you listening to that made you think, you know what, we're a little bit different?
Yeah, I mean, we listen to rock music, like, and that alone is considered weird for black kids.
So, I know.
Yeah, right.
I know.
So we would listen to like Zebra and yeah,
wow.
yeah, we
Deep
went
cuts.
there. Yeah,
That's
in
a
the
deep
middle
cut.
of winter.
What are rock? These are rock bands, not even goth.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like
straight up rock.
I used to rock music and like Zebra, Led Zeppelin and Def Leppard and Metallica and guys like that. But it was a blend because at a very early age I was always into just music, so I didn't really look at it as a black or white thing necessarily, but just music that I liked. I mean, and I wasn't alone. I mean, when you hear Beat It from Michael Jackson, like it's heavy guitar.
He was like, I gotta call up Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah, right. And so it did resonate throughout most of us melanated folks. But
are you hearing this? Are you hearing this on the radio or early MTV, or did you have an older sibling?
It was a little bit of both.
Yeah,
MTV, turning to the white station occasionally to listen to some stuff, and you just tend to connect with it, and that's what I always enjoyed. So. Not to mention, I thought that the cool kids, or the kids that were considered cool, were assholes. So, I don't like assholes. So it's, you know what I mean. So it's like one of those things where I hung around those people because they loved me for who I was, and it was like they were my tribe.
Music helped differentiate the different tribes a little bit, as they often do in schools.
Well, yeah, to some degree. I mean, it's just like any other school. You see the goths with the swoosh hair and wearing all black and stuff like that, and they were into the music they were into and stuff like that. Now, I didn't hang around all of those guys, but there were a few that I was one of those guys that kind of could bounce around because I liked R&B just as much as I liked metal.
Yeah.
But the people that I got along with and that I was able to talk to about those different types of admirations of music were the degenerates.
What were those cool kids listening to by contrast?
They were listening to hip hop, R&B, gospel. Isn't that ironic? And stuff like that. So
it was when you were auditioning for this group, I think you said that was your first time like singing gospel because they had you singing was it a Winans?
I wasn't a church kid in the traditional sense. A lot of the kids that went to the school they just grew up in church.
Yeah.
So hearing these amazing vocalists doing these incredibly intricate riffs and stuff like that made me want to go home and do my homework. So one of the first albums I picked up was BB and CeCe Winans, and just listening to him and how his vocal inflections, like BB is one of my vocal heroes, you know, and because I felt his vocal tone was very similar to mine. Like we were both kind of second tenors. So like
second tenor stand up.
Yes, exactly. So I connected to his voice and tried to learn as many riffs as I could, and I just became a sponge and found my own niche, Right. So, but yeah, I sang a BB and CeCe song called "Love Said Not So."
Tell me love said not so, without a reason or cause.
In front of the kids in my choir, and mind you, I was there for a whole year. I didn't even know I existed.
That's what they were saying.
Yeah, until I went on stage and started singing, and even the cool kids were like this.
Who's that guy?
Right. Who's this? Who's this skinny, big-eared kid? And right after that, Nate came up to me and said, "Hey, I got a group. You want to be in it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So that was it.
It's a great.
And
story.
is it at this point then that you start getting into the competitions at school? We've heard that there's a bit of a rivalry that started to develop between you and another group.
Well, no, not necessarily in school, but in the city.
Right.
There were a lot of groups back then in Philadelphia. Like that was the thing.
Yep.
Vocal groups or like
yes.
Okay.
Yes, there was a lot of vocal groups back in Philadelphia. And you had your local kids that, could do WAP and hit fly steps, and because everybody was trying to be like New Edition or the new Improved Temptations or whatever.
Right.
So you had a lot of groups that put themselves together, and you had some that obviously or apparently had more money than us because their clothes and everything were just so nice.
They could go to Chess King and Oak Tree and those kind of places.
Yeah. They had the nice slacks.
Yeah.
With the nice patent leather shoes.
They were all matching. Were you guys matching?
Yeah. We were matching.
Ish.
But we had to go to Twofers and
I've heard of Twofers because you could buy 2 suits for 1.
You know what I'm saying? Get a lot of value. So and so we would buy those outfits with the patent pleather shoes.
Nothing wrong with pleather.
Yeah,
I've worn the matching pleather leather jacket with my acapella group. Back
it got
in the
us
day.
through.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting to hear that even into the 80s, we have this Philadelphia tradition of kids on the corner doing doo-wop.
Yeah.
Because we did a Hall & Oates episode, and that's what they were doing a decade
Yes.
plus before, like in the 60s, actually, I think. And they were inspired by what came before them. So that lineage is so interesting.
Yeah, that was very much a part of the
Of
culture
Philly.
of the city. You could always walk down the street, on Broad Street or Market Street and possibly hear somebody hitting a couple of notes.
Wow.
So
Well, I'm glad you bring that up because it seems like everybody was like singing and learning their craft out in the open. Amir Thompson, aka Questlove, is a friend of the show. He's a friend of the show, and he said that you guys he spotted you guys very early on. In fact, he said that you cheated because you guys had like glitter and top hats or something like that. Is that true?
it's true, but it wasn't necessarily a competition more where we would win a prize. It was just more so. I mean, you go to school with guys like Amir and Tyreek, which is Black Thought.
Yep,
he was there, and Amel LaRue from Groove Theory. She was there, and Christian McBride, who's an amazing bass player, jazz bass player, one of the greatest working right now. And you have all these top tier musicians and vocalists and stuff like that. That when we would put together like a little talent show, or whatever, like it was, we had to turn up. So the top hats, no, but the glitter we did have.
The top hat was an embellishment. There was no
it was a little
top hat.
embellishment,
Okay.
but there was a point where because "Can You Stand the Rain" was like our signature record, so whenever we would perform it, we had a little move, and we would kind of we would
with the glitter,
like
the crowd.
powder,
and the crowd goes wild type.
David Copperfield, wow,
type shit. You know what I'm saying? Like,
they got magic, y'all.
Right, exactly.
That's why he thought there was a top hat. He thought y'all were gonna pull that out.
Exactly. So I mean, we all. It's funny because with Amir and just seeing how we've all evolved.
Yeah.
Like, just watching each other as kids and then seeing how we've developed as adults is pretty cool.
Well, according to some, I'm not saying it's Questlove, according to some, you may have evolved more than others. He told me that you were an amazing rapper.
I mean,
what can you tell me about the Rambo like a predator flow? Because he told me you got to ask about Rambo like a predator.
Okay. I don't remember a lot of my raps, so please don't ask me about it. I
surely, definitely going to
you remember a bar or two.
Yeah, right. No, I do not know. But I used to kind of like I was a big Chuck D fan.
Okay.
And I used to love Public Enemy, and I used to love LL and those guys.
Yeah.
So I tried to be clever with my wordplay back then. And yes, it's cringy now.
No, it's not.
But I thought that back then I was like really spitting like some real bars. And
were you dropping to baritone as well, like Chuck D or bass?
No, I tried that.
Okay.
And it just didn't, I had a, girly voice. But the point is I spent some time on lyrics, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
According to him, he said that you had a great flow, and he was like, I can only imagine if we had 2 ass-kicking MCs in the Roost. He was like, you could have been their Posdnuos. Those are his words.
Wow.
He
Amir,
said you could have been the Posdnuos of the Roots.
Amir, you're very kind, and I appreciate that. I mean, I've always been fascinated with being a rapper, and what I mean by that is, like, again, the guys I looked up to, they had a type of energy that was more so, they felt like preachers. And when they would rap, it was deeper than just being flossy. They were like schooling us on things.
Absolutely.
And it was more so that's what I admired the most about my favorite MCs is that they were more than just guys that just wore chains, if any. They were speaking to us.
Especially
and,
Chuck.
Yeah, Chuck was my guy. And just seeing what he did for me as a young black kid. Like he was very much an integral part of me wanting to read more and learn more about Black history and all those other things. So it was more than the music, although the music was incredibly dope. But
the music opened the way, but like definitely I will agree that like he implanted in us so much Black pride that like I think we just assumed that it was always going to be there.
Yeah.
And you would look up 20 years later and you talk to kids and they didn't have any of it. And you were like, well, what was it our parents or like I think it was our parents, but it was also like the music that we listened to.
Yeah. Yeah. What was magical about that time of hip hop is that even though it was very educational and very informative, it still made you dance.
Absolutely.
That was the secret sauce. Like I think that they intentionally did. Like, we're gonna make something that's gonna make people, bob their heads
and
move. But at the same time, we're gonna slide a couple gems of information and wisdom.
So if I can ask you about that, by the way, since we're talking about Motown Philly today, and we're in this moment, taking you back to 1990, 1991, in that moment, before the band becomes the band that is now a 35-year-old, you are what you are.
Yeah.
Before you had formed fully, and this song is one of your first songs that you recorded.
Yes.
In your mind, are you thinking, because the sound of the song is so unique, it's actually, there's a lot of Bomb Squad that I hear in the production of the song, right?
Yes.
Did you, in your mind, think that this band, as it's evolving, did you have a sense that it might be slightly more in this direction, in that direction, the mix that it ended up being?
At the end of the day, we were just kids doing music that we liked and music that we listened to. And it just so happened that it was inspired by production teams like the Bomb Squad. Like those guys, again, I was a huge Public Enemy fan. So, and It Takes a Nation, A Millions is probably one of the greatest albums ever created.
For real.
And in the moment you're making this record, that is the record. That's like on everyone's cassette player.
So our producer at the time, Dallas Austin, who also listened to the same type of music, knew how to incorporate a lot of those components to our music because we like the switch ups and the beats and the 808 like pounding and things of that nature. So yeah, that was very much, I guess you could say, intentional. And we wanted our songs to bang just as hard as Don't Believe the Hype.
Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype, it's a sequel. As an equal, can I get this through to
Absolutely. Well, before we go any further, let's play a little bit of the iconic video for Motown Philly. Here's a clip.
When was the last time you watched this?
Been a while. And it's funny because the girl playing the trumpet, shout out to Tyshell, most of these people were from our high school.
Really?
They all went to our school.
We saw the Questlove cameo in there too.
Yeah. Like so a lot of the few people that you see, like the girl taking the picture.
Yes.
Her name is April.
Okay.
Her husband was LaShawn Daniels, who used to be the songwriter for Darkchild, who passed away a few years ago.
Yeah, okay.
So
Rodney.
Yeah, Rodney. So but we were all friends. Like, we were all friends and we all grew up together and that whole thing. So again, seeing that, it's funny because just seeing the connections of, we wanted to make sure everybody or as many people as we could from our school and people that we knew were incorporated in the video so everybody can watch it and bug out, in our house.
Because you're still in high school, right? When
Yes.
when you make this, which means that you get to come to school the next day when it's on MTV.
Exactly.
And reap the benefits
Exactly.
socially.
That's insane.
Well, in 91, when it came out, Wanye was the only one still in school.
Okay.
I graduated in 1990.
Okay.
So I just missed it.
Oh, man.
Just that
You would
energy.
have been the king of school.
Oh,
right.
man, prom
I
would have been special.
Oh, it would have been crazy.
Can we talk about your look in this video? Because
Yeah.
I mean, like, look at me right now. I am wearing a baseball hat with a cardigan. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I can't tell you how much that video and everything that y'all brought in that. And by the way, it does not even necessarily match the image on the album, cover.
Yeah.
Because on the album cover, you guys got on it's like the fur leather jackets and all that. But like
Yeah.
here, like I will say, from the second that video came out, again, I was in Atlanta. The idea that you could be a nerd a black nerd specifically and
A
be
blurred.
cool, a blurred, yeah. Listen, man.
Yeah.
It meant something to us.
No. Listen, and it's so funny because now, I've noticed that the quarter zips are coming back.
I was just gonna say that.
And
so
you got
funny.
guys wearing khakis and loafers and the whole 9 yards. That's really just us. Like that's the vibe that we were trying to exude. And just to give flowers
Bivens.
where's due. Yeah,
right?
Bivens. Yeah, Biv came up with that collegiate look, the glasses with the cardigan sweaters and
Sort
the
of a
bow
rich,
ties and stuff like that.
waspy
And even though
Ralph
we
Lauren thing.
right, and
Yeah.
even though we were from the hood, we didn't exude that energy.
Mm.
If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like we weren't hood dudes like walking around like toting pistols or anything like that. We were very studious kids, that sang in choirs and sang classical music. And and Biv saw that in us. So he was like, you know what, we're gonna scratch the original cardigans and stuff like that, even though the cardigans was the first phase.
Right. And by the way, though, I also had a denim shirt that I would wear a tie with. Like, like whatever you guys
You were
brought,
inspired by this video.
sartorially in any video,
Yeah.
I was absolutely down with it. There were a lot of looks on the Biv Entertainment label.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads me to talk about one of the most interesting music videos of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I've been dying to bring this up on an episode of One Song. The East Coast Family video.
Oh, okay.
So, first of all, I think you guys were the first people to coin the phrase East Coast Family. Am I right? Like,
Yes.
I think
Yes.
I heard,
Yes.
was it Wanye or Nate who said he wrote
He
East Coast
wrote that.
Family?
He wrote that.
Okay.
Yeah, Nate wrote that part.
For those of you who don't know, one of the greatest music videos of all time is the sort of promotional video for Michael Bivens' label. It's One for All for One.
Yeah, all for one. Yeah.
And we're just going to play a clip of it, and I do have some questions. Play us a clip from East
I'm
Coast
sure
Family.
you do. Hayden.
The GOAT. Hayden's the GOAT.
Hayden was the GOAT.
He's got that shirt tucked in, boy.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? With the blue
Casual
blazer.
move with the jacket over the
The
shoulder.
spelling of white guys.
Yes.
Genius.
Yeah,
By
yeah.
the way, they only throw it up there a half second. Like,
Yeah. Right.
look at all the people around that
I
table.
really did think it was Wit Jizz when I saw it at first.
That's a different group.
Right, completely.
You're going to get banned for Blockbuster videos and shit like that. We don't have time
Where
to
to
talk
begin?
about every
No,
artist
no,
in this
listen.
video.
I'm interested to see what questions you have.
But by the way, I just want to point out Yvette Nicole Brown in
Mhm.
this video. She's Yvette. There are a lot of people who went on to have like very interesting. I even saw Hayden in an interview from maybe 2 years ago talking about, he's still singing. So like everything is like, it's a great video. But I just have to ask, like, what was it like to be like in this video? There's so many people on this song. You guys definitely go last because it's like, last and definitely not least. Here's our
Right.
marquee
Right,
artist.
that was the whole.
What was it? What was it like being on set for the East Coast Family video?
It was very hot. I remember that because I think we did it somewhere in Texas when it was like.
Oh wow, I would have sworn that was like Philadelphia. Or something.
No, that was
Okay.
like in Houston or something like that. And why we chose Houston, I don't know. I don't remember. I do remember we were on the road with Hammer at the time. Yeah, we took time to fly out, do the video, and head right back out to tour. But it was cool because everybody had a chance to get together, and it really was all for one at that point.
No,
we
of
were
course.
all very much in support of one another, and we loved each other and supported everybody's careers and all that other stuff. And it was just a good time. But it was quick though, because like I said, we did our part and then we bounced.
Another bad creation. I have to point this out because I learned it this week. You guys are on the chorus. At least some of you are on the chorus for Aisha, one of the
Yes.
great songs of this period.
Yes, Wanye and I.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, before our stuff came out, we did a lot of behind the scenes work.
Yeah.
Like, we did a lot of songwriting and background vocals and stuff like that for ABC, and an artist that Biv had, a rapper named MC Brains, and Nathan and
MC
I.
Brains was already big, I feel like, at that point. I feel like he'd come over to Biv, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was a kid out of Cleveland that I guess caught the attention of Biv and everything. So we would, write stuff for him. And again, some of the times I might be getting a little misconstrued or whatever. But for the most part, that's what we were doing until our music came out. Just a lot of background work.
Cooleyhighharmony, your debut album. The very first song on there is a song called Please Don't Go.
Yes.
I will come clean and say that is one of my favorite songs of any genre ever. Like, it's so...
I'm not mad at you, man.
Bruh, listen. It does something that I think all the best songs do, which is it starts one place and it's a fantastic place to be.
Mm-hmm.
But then at some point it goes to a completely different place. You're like, oh, it's like finding out something new about somebody you already like, but then finding out they have another skill. Like literally when you go to the end of this song, instead of me talking about it, play us just a little bit of Please Don't Go.
My feelings are so deep for you that I won't let go.
All right.
Listening to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were still in high school recording this. So we were at the time being taught how to sing classical music. So we were singing Bach and Vivaldi and Beethoven and Handel's Messiah and all this other stuff. So when I'm listening to it, my diction is so perfect.
I was just going to ask you. It's about clarity, right?
Deep for you.
This is clarity, right? As a contrast to gospel, maybe? Is that a little bit where
it wasn't hood at all. It was very polished.
It wasn't hood.
Mm-hmm. Because that's...
You hit the note specifically.
Yes, and the diction.
The syllable.
It was I remember...
Syllable to note correspondence.
Yes, and I remember that was very important when we were singing. Make sure that people hear every word that you're saying and don't make it, what kids would consider mumble mouth now. Like now it's the exact opposite.
It's the opposite.
It's like, don't let people know what you're singing. So, I just found that funny because I'm just hearing that.
I got accused of talking proper at my all black, middle school and high school. But this was my absolute favorite. In fact, this is one of the main reasons why me and some guys at my high school formed an a cappella group. Like we were just like, we just want to sing Please Don't Go. And while I have you here, Shawn, I want to sing a bit of Please Don't Go. And I want you to rate me on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being, damn, we could have used it in Boyz II Men. Or 1, please do go. All right, so here we go.
Do I get to rate you
too?
Yes, you do.
I can't wait.
All right, here we go.
All right, go ahead.
Oh, man.
All right.
13-year-old of me. Can't believe this is happening. This is a dream come true. I'm going to sing the lyrics the way I remember them. Now, your way, temptation may come, but when I get caught up with you, but when I get caught up with you, but when I get caught up, ooh, I let go.
That's a long
Don't crush my dream.
A long pause.
I've never been formally trained.
How about this?
Never been formally trained.
I admire your passion.
Your chutzpah.
That's the worst thing I've ever heard in my life.
It was a lot of passion. I felt you on that.
Bro, let me say
your bravery. We all felt that.
I
in
mean,
the room.
you gave it your all. And that's good.
When you play Atlanta and someone doesn't show up, me. I'll give you my number, 323.
Okay.
Hey, I have no regrets, man, because you know what? When I say that song, I come to this episode as a real fan.
Diallo have no regrets in life.
Masterful dodging of the answer, by the way.
Have no regrets in life. Do you?
1 to 10.
That was a 10.
Thank you.
Nothing wrong.
He knows.
See how easy it is?
There you
See
go.
how easy it is to support him?
There you go. That's it.
That's it.
There it is. That's official.
So for your debut single, Motownphilly, you've got this combination of two iconic music cities.
Mm-hmm.
Motown on the one hand with Motown Records, Detroit,
mm-hmm.
Supremes, you got Smokey Robinson, et cetera, et cetera. And then you've got Philly, MFSB, you've got Gamble and Huff. Mm-hmm. In your mind, at the time this was being, I don't know if it was explained or how was this concept, first of all, created with the group? And second of all, how did it take form musically in the choices you were making?
Yeah, this was a concept, the idea was created by Mr. Michael Bivens, who was, again, just on point. He was just in a zone.
That was his vision.
It was his vision to create a song that meshed the two cities together because coincidentally, us being signed to Motown and being from Philadelphia, two powerhouse musical towns who had their hay, but kind of fizzled out, as most things do, it returning through us.
Bringing back some of the traditions of both of those musical towns.
Exactly.
What were the elements of both? If there was sort of a mission statement, was it like, maybe the look of Motown meets the blank of blank? Is there a formula like that?
We were the blend of both entities. Us being signed to Motown and understanding the traditions of Motown, the Tops, the Temptations, and Smokey Robinson, as you mentioned, and being obviously from Philadelphia, which that DNA was innately in us because we were from there. We felt like we were the chosen ones in that sense to bring back balance to the force, I guess, so to speak. So it was really one of those things where Biv having the foresight to see these connections, and he literally just told us, hey, make a record called Motown Philly. And he gave us a brief description as to why, and Nathan and I put pen to paper to Dallas Austin's track.
That's crazy.
And Biv wrote the rap that basically encompassed what the story was about. It's Motown Philly is a 4.5 minute
bio.
bio.
So it's more of a vibe, not a very specific. Because in the 60s, I think of Motown as being a very 60s. That was the years, right? That heyday was the 60s.
Yeah, but the whole thing was it being back again a modern form.
Okay.
Like, we are elements of that, but in today's music era. You know what I'm saying?
It is rather ballsy on your debut single to sing about being back again.
Yeah.
But that makes a lot of sense because it's Motown.
It wasn't pretentious at all. It was really just us putting literally one and one together.
Yeah.
Sign to Motown. We're from Philadelphia. Motown, Philly. You're
going to synthesize both of them with your unique, in this new era with these four new people that are new musicians.
Yes, and it made it without, I guess by osmosis we didn't realize what we were doing, but it made people ingest it easier because once you hear the harmonies and stuff like that, the first thing you think of is Motown or the Philly sound. Like, so it all made sense.
It gave you like a reference point.
It gave us a reference point, and it gave people an understanding of what we meant without us having to sit and explain, well, what the hell does Motown Philly mean? Like, the song itself explained it.
It's brilliant.
When you heard harmony, when you heard the doo-wop stuff and all the other stuff, you instantly got it.
It's really brilliant. Your introduction to the band is a mission statement that we are going to explain to you and sing about, so it'll all be impossible to miss.
That's it. And we just did it organically, and we wrote basically what we felt Motown Philly meant.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to break down the beat that served as the foundation for this song and maybe a Trojan horse for Boyz II Men's beautiful vocals when we get back. Welcome back to One Song. We're hanging out with Shawn Stockman, and we're about to dive into the stems of Boyz II Men's debut single, Motown Philly. Shawn, Dallas Austin, he comes up from Atlanta. He's already got this New Jack Swing beat in his pocket. What went through your mind when you first heard this beat?
It was dope.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, when Biv gave us the idea to write this Motown Philly record, Dallas just so happened to have this in his stash. So with us going through a lot of his tracks, we came up with this one. We were like, yo, we want to do that.
And what had Dallas done up to this point?
Not much.
Yeah.
He was in high school too. He was around your age.
Yeah,
I think he'd done TLC's first album.
Not yet.
He hadn't. Okay.
That wasn't there yet. Like he did that after us. He was signed at the time to a lady named Joyce Irby, who was part of Climax.
Okay.
Oh,
absolutely. Climax.
Yeah. So he was signed to her. So
okay.
And the deal was pretty whack. So he wasn't able to do a lot of stuff. But we were kind of, I guess you could say, his first big project.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was just a young kid too, just like us, trying to get on. And he was incredibly talented. He had a lot of dope ideas and everything. The songs that we brought to him, he would bring to life.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much what encompassed Cooleyhighharmony. Like, that was us and Dallas.
It was him taking sort of your ideas, these song ideas that you guys have been working on in school,
and
sort of like bring them to a final point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and that's pretty much it. We didn't have the production prowess that he possessed yet.
Yeah.
So a lot of the songs like Please Don't Go and Lonely Heart and This Is My Heart and songs that we already had written, we just brought to him, gave him some direction as far as like how we wanted it to sound. And then he just took the ball and ran with it.
All right, let's try and get inside Motown Philly as we deconstruct this beat. LUXXURY, where should we start?
Let's start with the beat.
The beat.
Let's listen to the kick and snare.
Mm-hmm.
And right off the bat, with just these two elements, we already have a little bit of that East Coast swing or that New Jack swing. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute.
Okay.
First, let's just listen. Just kick and snare. But that syncopated kick has already given us something a little bit.
Yeah.
Right in there, we're already getting a little bit of that swing feel.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. This is at the height of Teddy Riley's career.
Absolutely.
The godfather,
The king,
inventor of
swing.
New Jack Swing. And everybody was trying to emulate that energy. He was very influential in R&B production. Dallas, being the great producer that he was and understanding what made a track a great one, he took elements of that, but then he added his own flavor to it as well, because Dallas has his own style.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Let's hear a little bit of, since you mentioned Teddy Riley, one of his productions that would have been influential.
Yeah,
Certainly
sure.
one of my first exposure. I think a lot of people think of New Jack Swing as beginning in this moment with one of a handful of songs that compete for the first one.
Yeah.
But a contender is certainly this one. This is Keith Sweat, I Want Her.
Yep, that's a good one.
I love that.
I want that baby. Get it.
So let's pause for a second and talk about what that bounce is, the New Jack Swing
It
bounce.
was all about the stabs.
The stabs are a big
Really?
part
You know
of
what I
the
mean?
sound.
Like it really was dun, dun, bop, 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 bop. Like it was all about those
Are
stabs.
those orchestra hits?
that-
What are those?
Yeah, the little synthesized.
We've got those coming up. We're going to break those down.
like just simulated orchestra sounds.
Right.
Late 80s, early 90s, those were on everything.
Bum, 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 bum.
Yeah.
Like everything
That's
was
a big
all
part of
about the big hits and the stabs and along with the pop, 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 pop. Like everything
Big
had
snare
to
sound.
be just so huge and had like dynamics and all that other stuff.
Yeah, the stabs kind of replace the crash in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And they make it updated and modern sounding.
Yes.
It was like a new thing to do.
Yes.
And they're hearkening back to, we're going to get into that exact sound in Motown Philly.
Yeah.
Because there is a similar sound that's slightly different.
Yeah.
But yeah, it harkens back to the kind of famous Planet Rock uses it, the Orchestra 5.
Boom, boom,
Yeah, yeah.
boom, boom.
Just hit me. Just twist the funk and hit me. Just get on down.
Because that just got you up and going,
Yeah.
when you heard that.
And it's also a new sound that comes from a different tradition. It's from the orchestra.
Yes.
But it's in an R&B song with electronic elements. So it's this cool blend of new, it's like these genres are cross-pollinating.
and it was actually a natural progression, because if before those, I don't know if you guys might be too young to remember, there was this one disco record that used Beethoven. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
A Fifth of Beethoven.
Yeah, Fifth of Beethoven,
From the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack.
Ba, 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 ba. Dun, 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 dun. Like, so a lot of it,
clavinet, yeah.
it was all about those hits, and that was just kind of like synthesizer companies like Yamaha and Korg and Roland and all those guys implementing that in the keyboards, where producers could get their hands on it and do it their way.
Exactly, right. Well, listen, let's just talk briefly about New Jack Swing because we brought it up. What is New Jack Swing? And we have a deeper dive into this. We can go back to our Far Side episode for Runnin'. I gave you a pretty long breakdown. So the summarized version of it, so we can talk about this song, is when we say swing goes back a long way. Swing is
100.
the essence of jazz.
Yes.
Swing is in a lot of things, and we'll talk about that. But literally, we're describing that in between an eighth note, you can have a straight eighth that goes da, 1 and 2 and 3. But as you start to change where that's, if there's 2 eighth notes, what happens in the middle to be a 16th note?
Yeah.
It could be da, 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 or it can be da, 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 da.
Yes.
That tiny little difference.
Yes.
In where do you put the middle 16th note? In between 2 eighth notes. If you put it right in the middle, it's straight, da, 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 da,
Yeah.
da.
And
But
then
if
you
it
put-
starts to be a little delayed,
Yeah.
da, da, da,
Yeah.
da, 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 that tiny thing, it's the essence of jazz.
Yeah.
It's the essence of swing. It's the essence of New Jack Swing.
Yes.
And that's what we're hearing just right there in the kick and snare that
Yes.
we heard of Motown Philly.
Absolutely. Thus the moniker, because there was a swing feel to it, which made the horns and everything that much more complementary. Because the great thing about that genre of music is that it did have elements of music that we've heard before.
Mm-hmm.
Teddy Riley, being the genius that he is, growing up listening to gospel and hip hop and R&B music, he knew how to reach back. So a lot of the music and the keys that he would play, very Duke Ellington and Count Basie and so when you hear it, you could strip down the modern day beat and then put a Count Basie beat under it and it would match perfectly.
Yeah.
Because that was the essence of it. The thing that made it different is he put a hip hop beat to it.
Yeah.
Because
and the sounds, the specific choice of sounds, those louder drums that are sampled make a big difference.
Those louder drums
make it sound modern.
That were influenced by the Bomb Squad and a lot of the hip hop producers, Herbie Lovebug, who was another guy who incorporated a lot of that swing type of energy to it and just made it modern day. And then you throw in a synthesized bass, boom, 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 boom. You know what I mean?
Like this new bounce.
It
gives it a new bounce, quote unquote, because it's actually an old bounce.
Exactly.
Right.
So again, that's just genius at work.
I think just to put an exclamation mark on that, I will point out that Quest was like, he thinks that Motown Philly is a jazz song in sheep's clothing. Like, in other words, like to him, he feels that there are elements of it that could have been right at home in Cab Calloway's catalog.
Yes. Again, we listen to Take Six.
Yeah.
And Take Six is just an a cappella big band group.
Absolutely.
A lot of their harmonies were influenced by big band.
Mm-hmm.
So us being influenced by that and doing a version, a very meager version in comparison of our own, you could say that it definitely has some jazz. You can hear the 100%.
Big band sound.
I can help draw that connection too for our listeners. Just to perfectly illustrate this conversation, here is a 1931 jazz swing song. Mm-hmm. Don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. It's a 1965 recording, but to illustrate the point, here is jazz swing.
Don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. It don't mean a thing on you.
What you're hearing on the ride cymbal is da 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 da.
Yeah.
That's a sped up version of the same da 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 that I was explaining earlier.
Yes.
Pausing on that middle 16th
or poise is
note.
Da 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 da.
Yeah, exactly. And and the modernization of that, which brings us back to our song, back to your song, back to Motown Philly, is there's a longer deep dive we'll do another day about all of these rhythms. But Chuck Brown, famously the DMV, the go-go version of this, of that same song, you can hear how it becomes updated and helps influence New Jack Swing with his cover of It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing from 1986.
Hey. Hey. Yeah, you can't have swing without that bounce.
Without that bounce,
like that's the bounce. That's what swing is.
Right.
It's that bounce, and a lot of that has even that Chuck Brown record. It takes me back to not me. I wouldn't live back then, but just listening to like a lot of the speakeasy music that a lot of us black folks used. Our
like
grandmas and grandpa, used to go to, and they used to drink alcohol from a jug,
from the tub.
You know what I'm saying, and all of that, and used to have these places where even the tempo was kind of similar in the sense where the ladies used to wear their skirts and they used to do their little sachet up on their man. It was fly back then too.
Absolutely.
The Motown Philly is just the embedded in this song. There's the Motown Philly that you were explaining, but there is also this black tradition, this jazz tradition, this Harlem tradition. Because of that swing, it takes us all the way back to Duke Ellington in the 30s into the modern day.
Yeah, if it doesn't make you do this, it don't have that bounce. It's got to have that bounce.
Don't mean a swing if it ain't got that.
Exactly. It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. That's it.
Let's get back into the stems. And that go-go beat makes its appearance even more explicitly with this sound. Mm-hmm. This is, I'll play it for you, then I'll explain what it is.
Yeah.
I'll give you some context.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So we're really explicitly getting that swinging 16th note.
Yeah.
That's the go-go, which is the name of the instrument. It's Have you ever seen the double bell, the percussive, the Latin percussion?
Okay.
I thought it was a cowbell. It's a double bell.
It's a double bell. One's a little higher than the other one. So that's the go-go.
Yeah.
And then the entire beat all together. And that last element in there is, of course, a very famous break beat.
The funky drummer.
It's the funky drummer break beat.
Yeah.
With, I think, an 808 kick just boom on the downbeat there.
Yes, yes.
That's Dallas Austin putting it all together, very Bomb Squad style.
Very Bomb Squad style. And all those elements back then is what made music sound so rich and full because it wasn't just a hi-hat, a snare, and a kick. That's fine, depending on what you're trying to do. But it's those elements, the percussive bells, the cowbells, if you will, and
there's a
those samples and stuff like that. Right. Like it made it hip. Because it's those elements that kids back then could relate to and hear and go, oh, that type of thing.
That's why we called it fat. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
right.
Fat beats,
it was fat.
It had a lot of meat on it.
It was fat. Yeah, exactly.
The inclusion of the sample gives it grit because you're literally using a sample, so it has embedded in it a little bit of the vinyl sound.
Yes.
You can tell it's from something older, but mixed with something newer.
We were the elements that cleaned all of that up vocally because
you were a contrast.
Yes, we were the contrast. And that's where the not too hard, not too soft came from. The fact that you heard the beat and you couldn't deny that the beat, when it kicks in, you're like, it's hard. But then we're singing
you're smooth on top.
You know what I'm saying, to it. So that was the I guess the beautiful dichotomy of
that's kind of the formula, right?
100%.
In a way, there's a little bit of as I'm thinking about it, there's a little bit of Motownphilly in that as well. Because when I think of Motown, since they're 60s recordings, they have more of that sort of reverby, simpler sound.
100%.
Because it's before the 70s and you get the smooth, slick MFSB, TSO, Sound of Philadelphia kind of thing.
100%. That was very much a part of us. And all we did was just implement it in our style and in our way.
Here's another sample I found that drove me crazy for 20 minutes till I figured it out. That horn.
Oh, yeah.
I can isolate it to give you a little clue.
Oh, wait, I know what that is.
Oh, yeah. Brass monkey.
That's the one.
That funky monkey.
It,
Yeah. So, yeah.
Brass monkey junkie, that funky monkey.
Again, back then, producers were freaking geek scientists that would take a sample.
As opposed to those cool scientists.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. They're better. That would take, like, say, a 4-bar sample and shrink it to just one
sound.
Half of a
just
beat.
To get a sound.
Just to get a sound. And this was before all you spoiled kids was able to just kind of take and manipulate stuff with a graph and all that other stuff. You had producers that had a little wheel where on the MPC 60. And that you had to and beep, beep, beep. Nope.
Which is what I think Dallas used an MPC 60 for this one, right?
Yes. Yeah. You use an MPC and you use those, you save the file, and then you would run it through the board to then mix it again and give it more EQ the way that you want it to sound. Then you run it back into the drum machine and then you'd do some more fit. Like, it was a process to get that one sound to make. Yeah, it was really, like, producers really had a grueling job to create the library of sounds that they made because they designed all of them, opposed to now
There's so much that comes in just your basic.
100%.
You had to know your records. Maybe you had ultimate beats and breaks, but for the most part, you either found the sounds in the world. There were no splice. There's no sample libraries yet. No. There weren't sample CDs yet.
Yeah.
There was ultimate beats and breaks. There was a handful of sources out there.
Sure.
But for the most part, it's your ear and it's your creativity and your knowledge of the machines.
And also, because you knew other producers were using the same beats and breaks,
right,
you wanted to make sure that your sounds were completely different from somebody else's.
Right.
Yeah, I like the way he did it, but I'm gonna do it this way.
Right.
So that's a producer back then.
Let's hear it in the mix Here's what it all sounds like together with the final step, which we now know to be Brass Monkey.
Four guys wanted to sing. He came up to me and said, "What's your name?"
Boyz II Men.
Hey, that's when he, broke into his rap.
Right on. So let's jump into the next layer. The beat layer was mostly comprised, if not exclusively, I would say, of samples. So here's the bass line, and I'm going to start bringing in other elements. These are all, I believe, performed by hand. They sound pretty human.
That's definitely him. Yeah.
With the piano.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we got to bring in the horns.
Yeah. That's him too. Yeah.
They're so synthetic sounding.
Yes.
That they have a charm to them.
Yes.
Yeah, I never thought they were real horns, but we all appreciate when they come in.
Yeah. That was, again, the synth horn was the thing to do. Almost like back in the 70s when you heard Ohio players play "I Want to Be Free," and you hear like we knew they weren't strings, but like it's the sim string. Yeah.
Child, I won't have to listen to your lie. On that day,
there is a charm, as you say.
Yeah. There's always a moment when the sound is first used that there's some maybe cynicism about it by haters.
Yeah.
But then it becomes what Stevie used.
Yes.
So I want to use it because Stevie used it.
It's like auto-tune. Auto-tune is hated, and then at some point somebody like T-Pain, who can sing, comes along and uses it.
Yeah.
I want to hear some of those orchestra stabs that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. So
because I will just say, for my purposes, orchestra stabs, I associate them with like not just the black music I was listening to, but like the Pet Shop Boys. You know what I mean? Sure. And like there's a lot of those orchestra stabs in like the British music from that time.
Absolutely.
So I'll just say, we were talking a moment ago about the orchestra stab as kind of a cliche, or it hadn't become one yet. It was in the midst of becoming one, meaning a sound that you would hear often in the genre. It's a staple of the genre. From Planet Rock onward, having a stab sound to maybe replace a crash is something you would come to expect by the mid to late 80s, certainly.
Yes.
So this particular synth stab, I'll show you the source. I'll play it for you in context, and then I'll show you where it comes from. The way that it's triggered like that.
Yeah.
I love that, because in the mix it sounds like scratching.
Yes.
And it feels like that might have been the intent.
That was the
intent. I thought it was scratching.
That was definitely the intent.
That was the intent, right?
For sure.
So what he actually did was he took this moment from the song "Cool Is Back" by Funk Inc. from 1971.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He took that little chop.
Yeah.
And he pitched it up about 7, I'd say. So. There it is, 7.
Yeah.
And once you get to 7, it becomes this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's to your point, because you said a lot of people would use those same sounds, but like, oh, I don't want it to sound just like, Dallas's. I don't want it to sound just like Teddy's.
Yeah, you want to be different. And the cool part was being creative on how you use the same elements that somebody else did. Like, I like that, but I'm gonna do it this way. And that's the cool.
And I don't know if Dallas would have used the "Cool Is Back" original source, or if he used it in Yes's "Owner of a Lonely Heart," which also uses that same sample.
That's true.
He might have sampled.
Yeah. I mean, it's really just, and also it has to suit the key. Now, the Motownphilly is in the key of D.
Yeah.
So he had to put he had to pitch it exactly. He had to pitch it exactly how.
Yeah. And then there are the strings. The dramatic strings.
Yeah.
Such drama. I'll bring some other things in now.
That's very Teddy Riley. Like that's very Teddy Riley-esque. As far as like, again, he was heavily influenced in
he made the genre.
What things sounded like back then. So you wanted to have those elements because that was hot.
That was hot. You wanted it to sound like, but different from at the same time. Similar, but different.
The key to producers, songwriters, singers, rappers back then was to not sound like anybody else.
But yet to sort of fit in isn't the right word, but it's
Yes.
you want to have it be evoking something that's familiar
Again,
in the world you want to be in,
we
but uniquely.
again, we listen to each other. So by osmosis, it's going to sound similar because we're all in the same house, so to speak, if you know what I'm saying. But it's almost like a painting. Everybody's going to interpret it different.
Yeah.
And I always say, like, you know, like playing guitar, for example, I can give my guitar to 20 guitar players and they're going to play it 20 different ways.
That's a great way to think about it.
So that was really the point to music, was to not be, as we used to say, a biter.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting there's a lot of biting going on in contemporary?
I mean, it's
R&B and hip-hop?
let's just say it's really hard to tell one artist apart from the other these days, because everybody's doing the same thing, singing the same way, running through the same machines, through the same Melodyne and the same auto-tune.
Same splice lists. I hear those a lot.
Yeah, like all of that. So it's harder to differentiate one female artist from another female artist, even down to the look, opposed to back in the day, like I used to look at my heroes as superheroes. Biz Markie had a superpower. Big Daddy Kane had a superpower. Chuck D had another superpower. BDP had a superpower. Like, and you can tell them all, they were all different. LL had a different superpower.
Totally different, yeah.
Like, so everybody's goal was to not sound like that man, opposed to now where everybody wants to sound like that man.
A little bit. Yeah.
Instead of Batman, is that man. You know, so that's really what it is. And that's what made, you know, and I'll extrapolate vehemently with people as far as why I think 90s music was pretty much the last decade of great music. People will say 2000s, and that was awesome. But even 2000s was only up to 2000, maybe 8. So
I've
this
heard
wasn't
this
even a
theory.
full.
I've seen this theory online. Yeah.
Yeah. So the 90s was the last inventive, creative decade.
That's interesting. Yeah, I hear
to
that.
me in music, because again, it was us modernizing what we heard from the past.
Right. So you're updating a lot of sounds and techniques, and you're synthesizing them in new ways.
And we're making them brand new.
And you're making them brand new in that synthesis.
And we brought attention those obscure records, those obscure artists and sounds that people weren't paying attention to. So we were also giving back, because thanks to those samples,
100%,
those artists, those songwriters were able to get paid.
They
and
actually
eat
got
too.
some compensation.
You know what I'm saying? So we were the first generation
because it was after the Biz Markie decision
to do that.
Yeah.
So that's why I think 90s music was the greatest
really
era.
special.
It's amazingly special. And not just in R&B either. If you look at a lot of the music that was made in the 90s, think about it. We had video budgets.
It's crazy.
Of $5 million. Like
well, you did.
But what I'm saying is 4 Seasons of Loneliness was $2 million to make.
Wow.
Like that was a video. They have nothing to do with anything. So you can imagine all of the money.
Because we had to buy the CD, we had to buy the tape.
Yeah.
We had to buy all that.
You got to imagine all of the money that was being made.
I will say the 90s is definitely the last time that artists were getting compensated for what they were bringing to these corporations. I think that part is undeniable, because as soon as the iPod came out, it started to...
Here's another reason why the 90s was great. You could be a songwriter and have just as big a house as an artist just by writing songs. You didn't have to do anything else but write a song. Ask a songwriter in 2025 how much they make.
And even if that song wasn't a
How
hit,
much do you make?
if your song was track 8 and not even released as a single, you could still make a living.
Because trust me,
those days are over.
Because trust me, like outside of Boyz II Men music, me and the guys would write songs for certain artists, you know, on the side.
Yeah.
And those checks were sweet. Like, you know, I could have like one record on an obscure artist, his artist go gold, and I get a check in 6 months. And it's like, whoa, I didn't even have to leave the house. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So again,
But we're glad you did leave the house.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you. Thank you. It was important. But but that's why, again, I think from such a wide range of reasons why the 90s was the best era ever.
I think we hear everything you're saying. I think one thing that's undeniable is the amount of time and effort you guys took, even when writing to a song like this, a beat like this, with your vocals. Like the amount of effort that it took to make those harmonies work and those stacks work, kind of like without comparison. And we're going to get into that in our next episode. That's right. We're going to get into the vocals in our next episode. You do not want to miss hearing the isolated vocals of this man and the rest of the group on this classic track. So be sure to hit play on part 2 when it comes out next week. All right, One Song Nation, it's time for One Genre. Our friends at Discogs challenged us to do a deep dive into a subgenre and share a few records we think are essential listening.
Just a reminder, we at One Song use genre as a way to talk about music with shared sensibilities, not as a way to rigidly define the music.
Yeah. We don't like to rigidly define.
We're not rigid. We're not definers. We're not rigid definers. None of the above. Genre has porous edges and borders, and today is no exception because we're talking about garage rock.
That's right.
Is it about garages? Is it about rock? It's a little bit of both. Let's face it.
I mean, I think when we were talking about garage rock in general, we were thinking it's sort of the first DIY music movement.
I mean, I think that's right. I think that in the mid-'60s, like after the British invasion, after the Beatles, you have a whole bunch of really inspired bands that are like, wait a second, we can get a bunch of guitars and drums and do this ourselves, minus the songwriting and all the other things, that production techniques of George Martin. But the idea of forming a band, which maybe we take for granted a little bit, and sometimes we think about as being maybe a punk thing, I think it's safe to say that garage rock was maybe a little bit of punk rock before there was punk rock.
It's a little bit like when Boyz II Men came out and everybody at my school to say, hey, we can form an a cappella group.
There's something to that. All you need is a couple guitars, a drum kit, 3 chords, and a dream. Yeah. You don't even have to be that great of a singer. But there is an incredible amount of incredible music that comes from this period of time, which again is maybe with roughly the mid-'60s into the late 60s, where there's just an explosion of bands that get to cobble together enough money to put out a handful of maybe 45s, maybe never really literally get beyond the garage where they are practicing the music. Which
or
is
that abandoned warehouse on the other side of the train tracks.
Which is where the expression comes from. You literally just get in your garage and
a lot of times.
Play loudly for maybe just the amusement of yourselves, some neighbors, and whoever buys that 100 copies of that 45 you do put out.
That's true. A lot of the songs in this genre are more cult classics than songs that blew up in the traditional sense.
And they may have been lost to time were it not for the existence of this first record, which I'm going to talk about. This is Nuggets. This is not the original version. That would be way too expensive for me. I did look on Discogs before I broke down and bought a reissue, but it was a little too pricey, too rich for my blood. Ironically so, given what it is a compilation of a bunch of those early garage rock bands who might have been lost to history had it not been for this compilation, which was put together by Lenny Kaye before he was with Patti Smith in Patti Smith's band. He worked at a record store in New York and was just a big fan of garage rock. So he compiled, along with Elektra Records, as he puts it, original artifacts from the first psychedelic era, 1965 to 1968. And this is where you get a bunch of one-hit wonders that weren't even hits themselves, but a bunch of songs. They're almost all the bands, like the Electric Prunes, the Standells, the Knickerbockers, the Leaves, the Blues Magoos.
There's so many good songs on this compilation, though. I will say I do own this on CD.
That's okay.
But this is
I won't
a great
disown you as a
compilation.
friend. Some of my favorites include Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire, Your Nose is Longer Than a Telephone Wire by the Castaways. And then there's Nighttime by the Strangeloves, which was later covered by Tones on Tail, one of my favorite bands. That's between Bauhaus and Love and Rockets. They were Tones on Tail.
Great band.
And the rest of this record, and by the way, it should be said, this is a 2-record set, but there are many, many compilations that this first edition spawned in the Nuggets series. And then there's all kinds of copies like the Pebbles series. The idea of compiling hard-to-find records from older artists that may have been lost to time were it not for the compilation process. If it wasn't spawned by Nuggets, it was certainly popularized by it. And now we sort of take it for granted. Rhino Records didn't exist until a little bit later and was probably inspired in part by the success of this record.
Yeah.
What about you, Diallo? What's your garage rock pick of the week?
Mine is going to be this album by The Seeds. The Seeds is one of my favorite garage rock bands. And this one I didn't know about until I went on Discogs and did a little bit of research.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out it's called Raw and Alive. It has some of my very favorite songs by this group, including Can't Seem to Make You Mine, such a great song. Up in Her Room, Pushing Too Hard. These are some great, great songs by The Seeds. But this album has a very funny story because it's called Raw and Alive, and it says it was recorded at Merlin's Music Box, which was a pretty famous coffee shop, I think on Sunset Boulevard here in Los Angeles in the 1960s. But guess what? Raw and Alive may be a lie because it turns out that they tried recording a live concert of theirs, not even at Merlin's, as it turns out. And lo and behold, they didn't like the quality of the sound, and they didn't even love the crowd reaction. So they went to the studio, they recorded their music live, and then added audience sounds.
Oh, they recorded it in the studio and then had audience sounds typed in?
So, I mean, they didn't just take the studio version and put audience sounds over it, but this is a live recording with no audience. Suspiciously, if you look on the pictures on the back, there's no crowd. I kind of love. Well, there's this one picture of this random hugging, I think, Sky Saxon. I think that's pretty much him, but...
Just suspend your disbelief and pretend. You'll enjoy.
I like a good con job. But by the way, The Seeds is a great group. They broke up right after this album failed to chart, but it's a great introduction to some of their biggest songs. And again, whether you're talking about Can't Seem to Make You Mine, Pushing Too Hard, Up at Her Room, just some great songs by a kind of forgotten band, except they're not so forgotten because now that people have discovered them, people are covering their songs. So check them out, The Seeds. So those are our one genre picks. Check out our list on Discogs.com.
And we know there are so many more garage gems out there, so please let us know some of your favorites in the comments.
Yeah, please do. As always, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok. You can find me on Instagram at Diallo, Diallo, and on TikTok at Diallo.
And you can find me on Instagram at LUXXURY and on TikTok at LuxuryXX.
And you can follow our podcast on Instagram and TikTok at One Song Podcast for exclusive content. You can also watch full episodes of One Song on YouTube and Spotify. Just search for One Song Podcast. We'd love it if you'd like and subscribe.
Also be sure to check out the One Song Spotify playlist for all the songs we discuss in our episodes. You can find the link in our episode description.
That's right. And if you made it this far, you're officially part of the One Song Nation. Show us some love, give us 5 stars, leave a review, and send this episode to a fellow music nerd. It really helps keep the show going. All right, Luxury, help me in this thing.
I'm producer, DJ, songwriter, musicologist, and KCRW DJ every Friday night from 10 to midnight, Luxury.
And I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ Diallo Riddle.
And this is One Song. We will see you next time.
This episode was produced by Melissa Duenas. Our video editor is Casey Simonson. Our associate producer is Jeremy Bimbo. Mixing by Michael Hardman. Engineering by Eric Hicks. Production supervision by Razak Boykin. Additional production support from Z Taylor. This show is executive produced by Kevin Hart, Mike Stein, Brian Smiley, Eric Eddings, Eric Weil, and Leslie Guam.